This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 451.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. We have the technology.
Why, hello everybody, this is Adam Silver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. We have two next weekend. Awesome. WordCamp Valencia out in Spain, October 21st and 22nd. And WordCamp Brno out in the Czech Republic, a single-day event, October 22nd, 2022. So that's very exciting. Hope those are great turnouts, in-person events, and be safe, everyone, of course. But I won't be there, sadly. All right, moving on. Segment one. Only one thing in the news here. WordPress 6.1 release candidate RC1 is now available. There's a link to the show notes. There's also a link over on wordpress.org/news. It's available for testing. Of course, you want to make sure you don't do it on a live server. The date that this is still coming out in theory is November 1st. So not quite 3 weeks away, about 2 weeks away from now, I guess? Yeah. That's kind of crazy. So there you go. RC1 for release candidate, for WordPress 6.1 is now available for testing. And that is it in the news. All right, moving on. Segment 2, why use analytics? So this week I'm talking about analytics, specifically for your website, of course. And first, some history. For those who may not know, don't really pay attention to this area of the World Wide Web as we know it. What are web analytics? Well, as defined by many on the web, I offer this. And I say I offer this, I'm going to say this isn't a quote, but I can't remember where I found it. I went back and tried to look for it, so I'm going to quote it. Web analytics is the measurement and analysis of data to inform an understanding of user behavior across web pages. End quote. Okay, and additionally, I found this also. Analytics platforms measure activity and behavior on a website. For example, how many users visit, how long they stay, how many pages they visit, whether they arrive by a follow or a link or not, end quote. So basically, it's all the information that happens on the backside of a server, of a computer, right, where your website is stored and being hosted. All that can be tracked, and most of the time it is being tracked. Whether or not people use that information is a totally separate knowledge game, if you will. I mean, web hosts have analytics of who's using their services, front end and back end, and from every subsite inside of that as well. You can get logs. That's a log is a type of analytics, I suppose, if you want to go that route as well. And it can get really very meta very quickly in the research I did here. But what I want to mention here are 5 reasons why web analytics are important for you and for everybody else out there listening. Number 1, the old adage of business where whatever it's worth doing is worth measuring, right? Number 2, web analytics provide insights and data that can be used to create better user experience for website visitors. Number 3, understanding customer behavior is also key to optimizing a website for your key conversion metrics. Makes total sense, really. Number 4, web analytics will show you the most popular pages on your website and the most popular paths to those pages, which could be and very well may be an e-commerce or a purchase end point, meaning it's where people go to buy something, okay? And number 5, with website analytics, you can also accurately track the effectiveness of your marketing online as well. Okay, so that is the basic 5 reasons why they're important. Now, there are 3 main areas of the data that comes out of analytics. I broke them down into 3 areas for you. There's audience data, audience behavior, and campaign data, okay? And within each one of these, there's about 2 or 3 or 4 sometimes different points that matter. Let's say starting with audience data, number of visits, number of unique visitors, new versus returning ratios, what country they're from, what browser or device, desktop or mobile, those matter. And then you can break those down. Obviously, desktop can be Mac, PC, Linux, mobile could be all the different devices, and then, or the company, the brands, Apple, Samsung, and then which exact device, which screen resolution, all that is very viable to figure out in audience data. In audience behavior, you have the common landing page, the common exit page, frequently visited pages, number of pages per visit, length of time spent per visit. I mean, these go way, you can keep going to the end of the day, really. The time of day people come, what's the most popular time frame, what day of the week, what day of the month. It's crazy, but those are just the top 5 right there. And then lastly, campaign data. Campaigning means when you actually do marketing specifically to get people to the website. Like, for example, which campaigns drove the most traffic? You might do an A/B split test here. Which websites refer the most traffic? Maybe you have affiliates. Which keyword searches that you might have invested in on Google or Facebook marketing or whatever it may be that resulted in a visit. And also, you can also break it down to social media. If you're using Instagram or Twitter or what else is out there? TikTok, I don't know. So those things also matter in the campaign data of analytics. So now you know why to use them and what to track. But what about the tools to do the tracking? Well, there are plenty of them out there. Some are within WordPress and some are outside of WordPress. So for example, outside of WordPress would be Adobe Analytics, HubSpot, Crazy Egg. And then inside, and again, I say outside means these are third-party services. Inside, you could go with Monster Insights, which plugs into Google Analytics. It's a plugin. Google Analytics itself has its own way of doing it. You can get a plugin. There's like 20 different plugins for WordPress into GA. We'll talk about GA in a second more. There's Jetpack. There's WP Statistics. There are dozens of other services that will do this for you and track everything by just adding some code to your website. Now, I wanted to mention something here. Google Analytics has some changes coming. You may have noticed it. There's verbiage? I don't know. On the top of the old interface that says, and I quote, Universal Analytics will no longer process new data in standard properties beginning July 1, 2023. Prepare now by setting up and switching over to Google Analytics 4 property. Now, with that said, I was like, what's that mean? So it kind of came back to get me. I recently created a new GA account for a new site, a new property site that we built and launched. And it looks different. It does look completely different. The interface, I'm baffled on why this is happening. I don't know yet. I'm going to dive into that as well. And I'll probably do a podcast about that in the near future. So there's a whole bunch of new settings. I think there's some new results and terminology in there, but I don't know exactly why they did it. So with that, I also have a plan based on this topic today to dive into some other services out there, like the HubSpots, like the Adobe, or Crazy Egg. And I think I actually have an account or I have a free trial at Crazy Egg, or I'll get one. I'll try it for the podcast because I care. So, all right. So there's that. And then lastly, remember this. Those in the analytics business want you to know this. I read this many, many times over and over again. Literally, every business is an analytics business. Every process is an analytics process ripe for improvement, which I thought was actually pretty deep. I like that one a lot. It's true. And every employee, from a project manager, developer, designer, QA, salesperson, could be an analytics user in some way. And honestly, I'm apt to agree with all 3 of those statements. I really am. Again, it goes back to that number one thing being, the business adage that whatever's worth doing is worth measuring. And I've heard that a lot from my entire career, not just in WordPress, but prior to that. The more we know, the better decisions can be made with data, right? You just have to take the time to implement some things, get it set up, and then take the time also to review those things. Having the data is one thing, taking action on it is another. So no matter what you plan to accomplish with analytics, keep in mind, you have the data, got to look at it, and then make changes with it. Or not, but obviously you want to make changes for the better with it. So I'm curious, if you're using analytics in some capacity, you want me to look at something to share, let me know what it is. If you have a tool that I could check out as well, I'd love to hear from you. So just reach out. There's ways to reach me, which I'll get to in a second. All right, moving on, segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip, actually it's a tool. It's freepik.com, freepik.com. It is a place to get some images and vector images. There's a free level and some paid levels. I have no connection to them, just found it online and thought I'd share with you. So there you go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead and send it in via email, adam@KitchensinkWP.com, or use that speak pipe function on the website. If you want to support the show, you can become a Patreon. I would love that. Also a link on the site. If you want to sponsor the show, you can do that too. There's a form you can fill out and apply for that. And if you want to do something to help the show without any money whatsoever, go ahead and leave a review. Ideally, 4 or 5 stars. Reviews are good for the algorithm, so I hear. Haven't asked in a while. Thought I'd do that right now. So go ahead, go to the Apple iTunes store or whatever it's called. Leave me a review, and I'd appreciate that. All right. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right. Bye-bye.